Hey guys, it's Aman
and Christina
from Our Rich Journey. This month marks our 3-year anniversary since achieving financial independence and retiring early. It has been an amazing journey. And we usually talk about the journey to achieving financial independence, but what we want to talk about in this video is how we're able to stay in financial independence. You see, it's one thing to do all of the work, but once you get there, if it all falls apart, all of that work was done for nothing. And so it's so important that you have a plan in place to make sure that you really never have to work again, that you are truly financially independent and retired early.
So in this video, we want to talk about 8 specific things that people do that cause them to have to go back to work once they reach early retirement. And the first one has to do with an emergency fund.
Now, for the average person that has a regular 9-to-5 job, their typical emergency fund is 3 to 6 months worth of living expenses. But when you are living off of your investments in early retirement, your emergency fund has to be set up a little differently. You see, when we achieved financial independence, our emergency fund was over 2 years of living expenses in cash that was accessible. And we had that money in various different accounts trying to get the best yield possible. But at the end of the day, that money had to be accessible because this money is our emergency fund in case the stock market were to crash. We call this our stock market F.I.R.E emergency fund. You see, since we've been in early retirement, the stock market has had 2 major crashes. One back in 2020, and in fact, we just came out of one in 2022. These were 2 bear markets. And our plan is whenever there is a bear market, we do not pull from our stock portfolio. Instead, we pull from our emergency fund.
So the thing with your emergency fund once you retire early is if it is not adequately funded and something disastrous happens, like the market crashes and the crash is long-term, it forces you to have to pull from your investments when they are down. It depletes your investments a lot faster. By having an adequate emergency fund, you can live off of that emergency fund until your investments begin to grow again, or in this example, when the stock market begins to recover.
The next reason why people fail at early retirement is because when they were on their journey of investing and building wealth to achieve financial independence, they put all of their investments in one basket. You see, once you achieve FIRE, the idea is that you live off of the investments that you made on your journey. So if you invested in the stock market or you invested in real estate, you're going to live off of the income that those investments are generating. Now, some people only invested in one particular asset and they get to financial independence and that asset, maybe it doesn't do well while they're in financial independence. And this is a major reason why they end up having to go back to work. They are not getting enough income from that one asset they grew to achieve financial independence.
So this means that when you're on your FIRE journey, you should really be investing in diverse sets of asset classes. So a lot of people will invest in real estate, but they'll also invest in the stock market. This means if you're doing something like this, once you retire, you can pull from the income of these 2 very different asset classes in order to pay for your expenses in early retirement.
The next reason why people fail in early retirement is they didn't anticipate big ticket expenses coming up when they retired. You see, you may own your house, but all of a sudden your house needs a new roof, a new AC. Maybe a healthcare issue comes up that requires you to pay more out of pocket than you anticipated. You see, these are all things that if you did not take into account when you were planning how much money you needed to retire early, these things could totally derail your early retirement. And this brings us to our next point, which is housing. Housing is a huge reason why people fail in early retirement. You see, on our journey, we owned our homes, but at times we rented. But it was really important for us that once we retired early, that we lived in a house that we owned. And we're so glad we made that decision because look at what has happened to housing over the past 2 or 3 years. Housing costs have gone up 15, 20, 50% in some cases. Imagine if we were renters. Imagine if we didn't own our home and we were trying to go buy a home at this very moment. The cost of housing is so high that it would have totally derailed our early retirement.
Now, I want to make it clear that we always encourage people to do this rent versus buy type of analysis. Really understand if it makes more sense to rent or buy. But if you ultimately decide to rent, you have to be thinking about renting long term. Ideally, if you're renting, you want to rent in a place that has rent control and you'll be able to stay there throughout the duration of your early retirement. Because if you are not in rent controlled housing for the entire rest of your retirement, you become vulnerable to these price hikes that can happen to renters.
The next reason why people fail in early retirement is divorce. Divorce can crumble your life and it can totally destroy your early retirement dreams. Let's say that you planned on retiring with your loved one, with your spouse, and unfortunately you get a divorce and your assets are split down the middle, or maybe even not even down the middle. Maybe one person gets a lot more than the other. Well, unfortunately, divorce is one of those things because it takes such a toll on your finances. It can definitely be something that sends you back to work.
And we say this because right now, if you are pursuing FIRE with your spouse, you are very likely both working, you're engaged, you're doing things that will support you making more, saving more, and investing more money. And a lot of times you're not together 24/7. But when you retire, you're going to have a lot more time together. So if you're not on the right footing, if you're not on the same page with your spouse right now, we encourage you to get there before you get to retirement and you're with each other all the time.
Because we would hate for you guys to quit your jobs and then realize that you don't like each other in early retirement. It is a completely different experience when both of you are not working. You are always around each other and you get to know each other a lot more. You'd be very surprised. Thankfully, Christina and I, we are so in love that we enjoy being with each other all the time. But we also make time to be away from each other. These are things that you must talk about. The balance that your relationship must have when you go into early retirement.
So this actually leads us to our next thing, which is not really having a plan or an idea of what you want to do in early retirement. A lot of times people are going through this journey and they're working so hard to reach this goal of financial independence and retiring early. But once they actually get there, they don't feel fulfilled because they don't know what they're going to do with their day-to-day activities. What is their Monday going to look like? The Tuesday, the Wednesday? What are their different days going to look like? And how are they going to fill their time in a meaningful way? When you get to early retirement and you can't answer these questions for yourself, a lot of times you'll find that you want to go back to work to fill that void.
Now, this is something that we do not have a problem with because Christina and I could not wait to take those 40 hours back. And we know exactly what to do with our days of the week. We don't keep track of them, as a matter of fact. I couldn't tell you if it's Monday or Saturday because every day feels like a Saturday to me. The next reason that people fail in early retirement is if they have adult children, they're irresponsible. If you have children that are always coming to you with some sort of dramatic, disastrous issue that requires money, this could be a serious damper on your early retirement dreams. You see, you may have to dip into your nest egg to help them here or there. Every time you make those types of decisions, every time you go into your early retirement money, that is taking away from your ability to sustain yourself in early retirement.
And the thing about this type of irresponsibility is that it's very hard to predict and add into your budget that you're going to need in early retirement. So a lot of times your adult children can come at you very sporadically asking for large sums of money. So our recommendation is that if you have adult children that are irresponsible with money, you need to have a plan for how you're going to deal with that once you reach early retirement. Are you going to be assisting them financially? And if so, how much are you going to be assisting them? Or will you not give them any money whatsoever? You really have to plan for that. Another thing that could actually help is if you try and teach your children now about financial responsibility and financial literacy.
And the last reason why people fail in early retirement is they have no long-term portfolio management plan. It is so important that once you have all of these assets, that you go about managing that money properly and correctly to be able to sustain yourself in early retirement. Christina and I know the ins and outs of how our portfolios should be managed because we've done all of the research to build those portfolios and to develop a FIRE plan. And so here, as we sit in early retirement, we know exactly what to do with our portfolio. Should the market go up? Should it go down? We know how to rebalance those assets. We know when to withdraw and how much to withdraw. This is all a part of the portfolio management plan that we've put together for our early retirement. So managing your portfolio is a lifelong commitment. We think that everybody should have those skills in place, especially if they are pursuing financial independence. And so it is so important that you develop those skills on your journey so that when you get to this point, you can manage that money on your own. Now, if you guys need help learning those skills, getting that financial literacy in order to achieve financial independence and sustain yourself in financial independence, Christina and I have a special program called 365 Days to FIRE that helps you develop those skills. It's a year-long action-oriented program that helps you develop the skills in order to achieve financial independence, but also to sustain yourself in financial independence. And so if you guys are interested in that program, we will leave a link in the description below, or you can go to 365daystofire.com. And with that said, we hope that this video has given you food for thought and has prepared you for your journey towards financial independence and your ability to stay financially independent. And so if you guys have liked this video, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe to our channel, and join the journey.